Season
Star
3.
Trek, right?
Oh,
welcome to Bonehead. Yeah. How are
oh,
you?
and Joe's recording. James, I am 30 minutes left to go in that last episode. Don't ruin it for me.
I put my wad on it last night. What took you so long?
So we're not
I have
supposed to tell him.
kids.
We're not supposed to tell him that that's finally.
You have one. I have two.
We're not.
They take up twice as much time.
Yes.
You put them down. You have dinner at 3:00, so they'll be in bed by 6, so they can get up at 4 to slop the hog.
Let's not argue over our children. Let's just go ahead and run it for Chad. So we're not supposed to tell them about when Cybok shows up, and it all ties back to Shakari.
Well, I mean, I loved how they connected Peter Weller's character.
So
and he's
how
in the
those
Kelvin
generations.
He's in the Kelvin timeline, but they made it work.
They made it work, bud. They made it work.
Okay, so let me add.
And they finally fixed Into Darkness.
Does this? Oh no, there's no fixing that.
Turns out it was actually Gary Seven pretending to be Khan just to throw everybody off, so he could warn people that Khan was still out there. That's what that was.
Lost me when they did that fake John Wayne, Ricardo Montalban bullshit, having him show up with the CGI.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but they got the chest right.
And they did use at least the John Wayne playing Genghis Khan from The Conqueror. Yeah. So, I mean, it worked a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry we ruined that for you, Chad.
And the rest of the audience. By the way, we're going to give you some spoilers for season 3. If you haven't seen it, probably should go ahead and listen, because we need the clicks or listens or whatever they call them.
So I'm just curious if this makes me really nerdy or racist, sad, or a combination of the two. Not necessarily racist, but I was watching it.
I like the fact it didn't completely deny it either.
Well, but here's the thing, by the way. One thing about Star Trek, say what you will, but it is still confronting Star Trek Discovery. It is still dealing with both racism on a systematic level. I mean, Burnham's relationship with Klingons from the first season, but also it is dealing with it still deals with the casual racism that goes back to the original series, where McCoy would always call out Spock as, a cold-blooded Vulcan and everything, which is a form of racism. Now, they were friends, so I guess it's okay, but we have to acknowledge that is a little bit problematic.
Yeah.
Outside of that cultural, if he starts walking up to random Vulcans on the street and being like, listen, you green-blooded hobgoblin, now that is direct, and that's not.
That is still one of my favorite lines.
Goblin from now on.
Every time I hear that line, I chuckle. It's just,
I say that half jokingly, but it is actually a valid point that gets brought up some. And I think Discovery does a pretty good job of still saying, okay, we still got
Discovery this season was dealing with people and their pronouns.
Yeah. I prefer to be called them or they instead of
which, by the way,
Chad wants to be called that.
No, I would prefer not to be called what I would just prefer not to be called what most females called me my entire life. Ugh. That's all.
I think they called you that to your face.
Chad,
not to my face.
If it makes you feel any better, I too had issues with what women called me. It took me a long time to get them to stop calling me their royal sex machine. It took a while to break them. I had to be like, no,
my lovely purple-headed warrior.
No, women. I am just a normal man.
I am beguiled by his. What do you call those? Widow's peak.
I am. Please, madam.
We don't need to hear about how you cut your pubic hair. But
please, madam, stop calling me your royal sex machine. I know you're the Queen of England, but stop. Please.
All right. So, Chad, get through your point.
Yeah,
so
I just didn't know if it. I was watching it one night, and I was by myself, alone in the dark. And they mentioned self-sealing stem bolts. And I went, and then I realized I'm the only one in the room. And also I'm the only one in this house who would even get that reference.
You lost me. Weren't it
you don't know self-sealing. You don't know about self-sealing stem bolts?
They're referred to, I don't think they're in the original series, but I think they're referred to from Next Generation forward. It's one of those.
It was really heavy in DS9.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, isn't that an entire subplot? Doesn't and I could be misremembering but doesn't Jake and Nog somehow get a a case of selling
Yes.
stem boats, and
They
they're trying
get
to
a
figure out what
case
they
of
can,
yes.
what they can trade it for and how they can barter it and what they can do with it.
And
Yes,
that's
no,
the only time where you actually see what a self-sealing stem bolt looks like. It don't look like no damn bolt.
no. If you play the video game that it's available on your app store, whatever you use, Galaxy or whatever, Apple, Star Trek Timelines. Actually, there's step where you have to upgrade your characters over time. And I think almost every character at one point, you have to get an upgrade that involves a self-sealing stem bolt. And it has a picture of them there. And I'm always like, oh. And again, I'm with you, Chad. Like, I play that game, and every time I'm like, oh, self-sealing stem bolt. Nobody cares.
I
can't show it to my wife and kids be like, look, it's a self-sealing stem. They don't.
I just could not stop giddy laughing about the fact that they said self-sealing stem bolt in Star Trek Discovery. I'm like, oh my God, I got a reference.
Joe, you try to tell the kids about self-sealing stem bolts today. They just don't care.
All right. So this is what Chad and I were talking about before James got on late, was that I didn't think the last episode of this, I apologize to our audience, was one of our better ones. Blame me. And the thing is we were talking, I don't know that we talked about the series enough. And here's my confession. I have seen every episode of Star Trek now except for Lower Decks, right? That is available to see. I have seen them all, but I've never considered myself a Trekkie or a Trekker, however you want to say it, them, they, you, us, whatever. Now, I love Star Trek, but I swear to God, I have to have people remind me about what happened. It never sticks in my head. Now, I can say that about a lot of shows. I know the movies, the first 6 movies like the back of my hand. Well, I know 2 through 6 like the back of my hand. But I can't remember the shit. So I was excited about tonight to talk about it because I just don't remember most of it.
Yeah,
I just don't. It doesn't stick. I remember a lot of stuff from DS9 because I love DS9. We've said it before; it's my favorite one. But Laws of Acquisition and a few things like that. But self-stealing, say shit. I can't even say it. I can't. I don't know why.
Self-stealing stem boats. You can't. Self-stealing stem bolts. You can't keep track of. They keep stealing themselves.
So can we talk? Here's the elephant in the room for season 3 for me. There's a couple things, but this is the big one. So they're in the future 800 years. If you've watched the show, we're going to do some spoilers, correct? Is it 800 years roughly?
800, 900. Yeah.
It's 800, I thought it was like 987.
It's 900 some. Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's been a shitload of time.
Because they make the comment.
They get there and everybody.
It's been a long time. Hold on. Let me get us some extra clicks. It's been a long road getting from there to here.
Or
Enterprise fans, that was for you. Thank you for tuning in.
It's been a while. I can't do Stained.
No, you've been Stained, though.
But you have stained several things before. Here's my problem with all this. I don't give a shit of who's a Klevekian, Kelpien, whatever they're called. I like a lot of the characters. We talked about that last episode. I don't care that now things don't talk and they come back and they're basically Transformers going through asteroid fields. None of that bothers me. You know what I call bullshit on all this whole exercise? Not the wormhole, not that they traveled through time, not that they're science fiction, none of this shit. Here's what I call bullshit on this season 3. Is that they're able to put them on the monitor or whatever, I almost said the viewfinder. As soon as somebody calls, they're being hailed, they're able to put them on. You can't get a fucking iPhone 5 to talk to an iPhone 8. How in 800 years are they using this antiquated technology to still be to talk to others? Does that not just drive you all crazy the first few episodes? And then they fix it because then the ship gets an upgrade once they find Starfleet. I was sitting there, it's pissing me off the whole time.
We still use Morse code.
Not the same. And we've only had Morse code for what, 300 years? And they use Morse code on the episode where they talked to Peter Weller back in time. Chad hasn't got to see yet for that last 30 minutes.
I've seen the
Star Trek Into Darkness and the motion picture.
I've seen the Morse code part. Well, where were you tapping to him? I was telling him to keep tapping.
Yes. And I have one other problem with it, but keep going.
Well, here, I don't have a problem with that because I do think it's one of the things that if I hook up a
You
You know,
can't get an analog television to play without an
No.
adapter.
no, that may be a valid point, but AM FM radio signals still work.
They
How old are
out
those?
there. I just call bullshit. I was just sitting there going an iPhone 5 and an iPhone 8. You can't even get the same charger for that shit. It won't even work. Keep going.
No, I mean that honestly, that didn't even phase me. There's stuff that does knock me out of it, and I'm going to get into that too. But it's something that is universal across all Star Trek that I just can't stand. I literally can't stand it.
All right. Those last 3 episodes are almost a movie. They're so action-packed and good.
Oh God, yes. It was an homage to Die Hard at one point.
Total. I actually just looked over at Christy and said, "Was that fucking Die Hard?" And she goes,
It was either Die Hard or Executive Decision.
No, it was Die Hard. I'm pretty sure they're going to take credit for Die Hard. Here's my second thing, and before I mean, in all fairness, Michael Burnham did Steven Seagal Stammet.
By the way,
thing I want to say before we're done, and then you all can feel free to take over. I enjoyed the season. There's always 1 or 2 clunker episodes, but there is for anything. However, is it really still Star Trek?
Yeah.
Oh God, why wouldn't it be?
It is.
It just isn't. It's just not the same. I enjoy it. It's called Star Trek. Obviously, it takes place in the Star Trek universe. All right, back to what we were doing. So, as I was saying, I know it's a controversial thing. I know I'm not the Trekker. I know it is Star Trek, but in a way, it just isn't.
But see, I
enjoy it. I'm not shitting on the show, James. I enjoy them.
But I think the difference between it and Star Wars is a little bit more of the technology side of things. Like there is a little bit more, as the Next Generation cast termed it, technobabble. But there's a little bit more science to back what they do. The other part about it, though, that sticks out to me is that Star Wars tends to be individually focused. And what I mean by that is, yes, you have other characters, but ultimately the newer movies are about Rey, especially if we go by that last film. Finn isn't given a lot to do. Poe's not given a lot to do. It is the Rey
2 hours raking that thing across the coast.
Well, no, I know. And then,
sadly, I wasn't on there. I wasn't on that episode to tell you how much I hate it.
But the other side of it is,
it's worse than episode 1.
And the same thing, like we care about the other characters, but it is a Skywalker ship, right? I mean,
yeah,
for those specific movies, yes.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So I think within what most people consider the main heart of Star Wars is individual focus. I think Discovery is still that ensemble.
Yeah, because
to me, like I said, Burnham, yes, is the quote unquote main character, but there's so many other characters that, like, honestly, something happens to Jet Reno, I'm telling you right now,
I'm not going to be happy.
Kurtzman, I will pout. I can't do anything to you. You're famous and I'm nobody. But there'll be like 2 or 3 days where I will just post on Facebook and tag, or on Twitter and tag you. This is how I feel right now. And it'll be a sad fat man like me. Is that what you want, Kurtzman? Yeah, don't kill off Jet Reno.
And James mentioned this, but I kind of want to jump on your comment about that, because if you don't consider this Star Trek, but how can you consider something like The Mandalorian Star Wars, other than the very last episode?
It's close. I think the difference for me is the only thing that this, I get your point, but I think the only thing that this kind of carries over from all other Star Treks in a theme, and I'm probably talking about theme here, and most of this is just a feeling I get, so it's kind of hard to qualify and explain. But when we're talking about themes, the one thing that this does do, like other Star Treks, is the social commentary.
Yeah.
And
but it's quite a bit self-referential. The Die Hard thing is a very good example. Is very much becoming a space opera. It jumps characters quite a bit. Of there's here, then there's there, as far as who's going to be the captain this kind of week. It just
Yeah, I think
things are, you know what I mean? For
but I
ease
think
of storytelling.
I think with that, I think they're building up to something, because that's one of the problems that I found out that Star Trek fans are having with this, is that it's telling a continual story. Because when you watch season 1, did you really think by season 3 they were going to be 900 years in the future? I mean, I think they're leaning a cap. I mean, it's just right now they're lost in space. They don't know what they're not lost in space, but they're lost in time, and they don't know, they're figuring things out for the first time. I mean, I feel like it's Star Trek. Here's my reasons why it feels like Star Trek to me. Federation's gone. Here are this group of people who knew what the Federation was and what it should be, and they want to get it back to that point, because they know how well it is. And then at the same time, Star Trek has always been about exploration. It's always been about strange new things.
Point. I don't know that a lot of this is about exploration.
But in a way it is, though. I mean, if you think about the new planet that's surrounded by the nebula, the dilithium crystals, if you think
once
about,
again, it's just a plot device from A to B. I don't think it's not like it's not, and probably Strange New Worlds will address this a little bit more, but I don't know.
And I mean, seeing the master James, the guardian of Guardians of Forever.
Yeah, well, which I love, and that's kind of a throwback to what we saw in Enterprise and what we've seen a couple different times, where the Guardian Carl.
I really like that episode, but that is a fan service heavy episode, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
It makes sense, and it actually harkens back to Harlan's point a little bit, that the Guardians were originally going to be people. And so I love the fact they kind of built that back in, that this is a thing of so much power that it can be what it wants to be.
Yeah.
That it can warp time to become what it needs to be. And so I really like that episode. I agree. There's a lot of fan service, but I also don't think it's so much like, my wife's not she's seen some original series episodes, but she's by no means a fan. But that didn't take her out of the episode. Like, she was like, okay, so it was something from before.
It's one of the few times I had to remind Christy what they were talking about, because that was actually the only episode where I went, oh, like that real quick. And she was like, I don't understand. I was like, well, yeah, because usually I have to ask her because I don't remember. Yeah. But yeah, and boys, it's not a judgment so much on the show as much as they have adapted something to probably more modern taste. It's just, I feel like it's less Trek.
I will give you that.
Star Trek.
I will give you that.
It's an action piece. And I love the fact that they do 10, 12, it's 13 episodes, but it just jumps, and it's just not quite. But I like the show quite a bit. I really do. It's always entertaining. It's very well made.
I really get what you're saying. And the thing with this Star Trek series is that it's the first Star Trek series that's been given a flipping budget. And also,
it looks good. It looks good.
Also, we have technology in TV and cinema making has advanced so much since the original series, since even Voyager, that they're able to do a lot more, and they're fully utilizing that, in my opinion.
But I think the other thing that makes this still Star Trek to me, and not Star Wars. Star Wars, there are individual people that have power, right? And to me, the standout character, and not giving anything too much away, Chad, I know you've got a half an hour left, and I don't think this is going to give anything.
I will knock you in the nuts next time I see you, buddy.
It'll be a risk I have to take, because I have to say this in this episode, or I don't feel like I've talked about season 3. To me, the standout part and the heart of Discovery season 3 is a character that only appears twice.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 3 times. I'm like, yeah, it is Kovich.
The
That's
guy that James. Kept Joe. On that little remote outpost.
I had no idea.
That guy on the little remote outpost that kept the Federation alive would not hang the banner, because that is supposed to be hung by a Starfleet officer, but he kept the faith.
That was a great episode. Yeah, I love that.
And that story arc he has in what really 2 appearances is one of the most Star Trek. It's not about the Federation. It's about the ideals. It's not about, and that to me is what makes this all of the Discovery. And to be honest, the fact that Star Trek Discovery is addressing, as we alluded to before, ideas of gender and all of that stuff.
They do that right. They really do. The social commentary, I That part of Discovery is Star Trek.
And I think that's why I'll argue this is not, to me, it's not gone in. And by the way, I love Star Wars. I'm not bashing Star Wars, but Star Wars is about, oh, look, you've got a space wizard.
Yeah, and before anybody, and hopefully you put this on all the Trek boards, because before all of them start bashing me, I've been bashed before. I've told you all about the Frank shit, right? And he and I got along fabulously. I can't imagine what would have happened if it went poorly.
Yeah, he didn't. We should say he didn't have a problem with you.
People
who later watched the interview,
the
thought
fan,
there was a
yeah,
problem.
yeah, the people who watched the interviews had a problem with it. So, it's just less Trek to me. It's just not Trek. It is Star Trek, but it doesn't have whatever that tangible theme feeling I have.
See, I struggle with that, because to me, there's elements of
And
it.
it's not a negative thing. It doesn't bother me.
But I think the other side of it is, to me, there is elements
Much more bothered
of it
about the stupid technology working with something 800 years later. Can't
but
even find an adapter for your damn phone.
But the Federation resolved all that before it got blown up. Anyway,
it's in that glass Nova cloud thing over there.
Well, now the flip side of that, though, is
they've never used that plot device before.
I do have a flip side for you there. There is a point to be made that when the Enterprise gets flung back in time in the original series, they can read radio signals, they can pick up TV signals, they can do all of that stuff. You see that in Tomorrow Is Yesterday. You see that. So I mean, and that's the ship doing it, not City on the Edge.
I could go off about how are they learning 800-year advanced technology so quickly too. Don't get me.
Well, now, in all fairness, Linus doesn't exactly get it right. If you remember, my friend, he tries.
They don't exactly get it right, but they're not having problems with the Coke machine.
Yeah, I will back Joe up on this. This was one aspect of it that really bothered me. Was all of a sudden they're like, oh, we know how to, and they're using their badges and they're looking. I'm like, how? That requires some training. Now, one thing, they don't talk about the span of time of how long this is going on. That was my one. This is what I told myself is this could have been 5 months.
It could have been. But,
and I'm just like, but at the same time,
montage, and they had to fight the Klingons for the ski school.
I mean, it took me.
Actually, I would have paid real money if they just would have cut to like one of them running up an icy hill,
and then one of
Rocky IV reference.
And then one of them said, "It'd be no trouble at all."
Yeah, just give me fan service.
No
That's fine.
trouble at all.
So let's talk. I mentioned him. Were either one of you all shocked when David Cronenberg came on?
No.
Yes and no, because
every part of that, and I
love him on the show, but I didn't know he was coming on.
Yeah, but
he has a bigger story, I hope, because that's another character where I'm like, oh, he is just so good.
So did you guys read the interview about him acting now?
No.
He has to make a living.
Oh.
In all fairness,
it's harder than ever to put together an independent film.
The flip side of that, and I'm not doubting David Cronenberg, let me say that, but don't you think, like, if he were to live on, let's say, our means, what would that be? 2 conventions for him? Charge $100 a signature? How many people?
Yeah, I actually know a couple of stories about him. I mean, Carpenter talks about him a little bit. Of course, Carpenter is also a curmudgeon, but a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of both of them, but he's also a curmudgeon. So yes, you would think the way. Well, I'm not going to get into it because this is less Trek, but I love the fact that he showed up. He had a couple of scenes towards the end that are a little, not hammy, but a little. He could have put a little less Cronenberg on it. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
There was like, just say the lines, just act a little. But I can't. I've got to find out what his character is. I'm with you all, and hopefully they're building something out for that.
Every time
he lives in Toronto, right? Is that where the show's made?
Yeah. Or Vancouver.
Is it Vancouver or Toronto?
I think it was Vancouver. I don't know. I know they're doing Strange New Worlds right now in Vancouver, but they've already filmed, or they began filming on Discovery much earlier.
Oh, are they already shooting on season 4?
Oh yeah, Discovery season 4 started filming before Strange New Worlds. Now, when it's going to come out, there's conspiracy theories about. But
Oh, okay. So I enjoy it. I hope they build that character out. It was cool to see him. So I knew he was acting more, Chad. So my answer is yeah. I was like, oh, but I think it actually had been ruined and I'd forgotten it, and it clicked in my head.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as he came on the screen, I'm just like, holy shit! And the fact that he's looking the way that he looks now, those glasses were killing me, by the way. But
see, I love so much of that though, because it is. I mean, it's one of those things that I appreciate, and one thing that I think Star Trek Discovery has done really well is effectively, quote unquote, humanize its background or make it really. I mean, yes, most of the Starfleet officers are still really, really fit and don't look like me, but I guess they figured out the thyroid issues of the future.
Well,
but anyway,
Tilly's not really fit.
No. I mean, she is,
which I like that.
Well, I was going to say, and she has a lot of heart, and she's brilliant in her own way, and I love that character. That's another character. Again, there's no character that I can point to going love everybody, but that every character has something where I'm like, it's a.
Who's the least interesting one to you all?
I don't know. It really depends. Probably. Here's the one thing I do have, and obviously we've got time to figure this out. Discovery has introduced a lot of characters, and some have been largely, for instance, the two doing Morse code. Mm-hmm. They have been there since the beginning. I don't know what their favorite pizza toppings are. I mean, I'm saying that's to be somewhat silly, but you know, and of course we look at this retrospectively, right? I have 7 seasons of Next Generation to figure out Deanna Troy's preferred chocolate, right? Whatever. We don't have that yet for Discovery. We're having to discover it as we go. That being said, I think one thing, Aram, the character that sadly was killed off, that was the cyborg type character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I that's a great character, but I wonder if when people are watching this, 10 years from now, if it's not going to be the same comment some people make about Mayweather from Enterprise. Mayweather was a compelling character. The first generation born in space, he was called a boomer and all that stuff because part of the space boom travel. But really, what did they do with him in 4 seasons of Enterprise? It's a compelling character, and no issue with the actor that played him, did a great job. But there were times when that character didn't have much to do other than. And so I think that's one of the challenges I'm having with Discovery with characters is they have a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Arguably, I would almost say they may have the most characters that have been given some pretty serious screen time that we don't know much about. Like it used to be in the Star Trek universe, if you were on the bridge more than in front of an exploding console, when it just so happened that a main character was on their coffee break when it exploded in space, you had a backstory, or you would eventually get one. Like Worf started as that character that was, and then got promoted when Denise Crosby left the series.
Mm-hmm.
And we got that as that went on, we got more story. I hope we see that with Discovery, because there are some compelling characters. We know something about Tilly. We know something about Burnham. We know something about Saru. We know something about Stamets. But they do have these other characters. Detmer, I think, could be a fascinating character. I love the way they addressed in some ways the idea that post-traumatic stress exists in the future.
Yeah.
That she has those moments where she is keeping it together and the way people respond around her. And I love the way they're doing that. I just hope we do get to see a deeper exploration as the show goes on, because I can't answer your question right now because I don't
remember asking what. Did we?
You said you said who was the least interesting character.
Thank you for reminding me.
James gave that diatribe of essentially going, I don't have an answer. I will answer, but I have a follow-up question. Are you talking about like one of the main characters, or do sub characters count?
I don't care.
Because like James, there are 3. He mentioned 2 of them. There's 3. There's the one who flies next to Detmer, Joanne Usakuen. That's her character name. I feel like she's just there. She doesn't really do anything. And I'm like, why is she even there?
And she gets a little bit more of a character arc in season 3.
A little bit more, but nothing too, fascinating. And then even,
come on, she's the one who has to punch Peter Weller in the face to stop Sybok. for messing with Gary Seven pretending to be Khan.
And then he looks at her and says, "What does God need a fist for?" And she says, God should never end a sentence on a preposition.
But and then you also got Lieutenant Bryce, who's Ronnie Rowe, who's the African American gentleman. Again, he's just there. He doesn't really serve a purpose so far, and I'm just like, there's nothing. I'm like, why even provide screen time to him when all he's there is to give a look. But now, if you want to talk about the top ones, I'll tell you the least interesting one for me, and it's kind of controversial. I still have not really globbed onto Stamets. I just can't.
I love
now when Reno is in the room, Stamets shines. But for the most part, he's just not. He's not the character that I think he should be. Like, he should be this grumpy, I know everything, you don't. And he kind of started it out that way in season 1, and now he just kind of say, that's fascinating. Let's try that.
Well, but I think that to me is, the first season he's having to respond to Lorca, so he has to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Because Lorca and him have that entire scene where this is now a military operation. And he goes, "Well, it's my science," and they go back and forth. And so he's encountering what would literally be the sand having to be, okay, you want to be that way, I'll come back you that way. And I think part of that is, to me, it's him being humanized because he's having to interact with people. And, he starts to think, well, the Federation or Starfleet operations is always going to be Lorca. They've taken my science. They're making me use it. They're doing this. But then he encounters Tilly, whose dream is to be a captain like Lorca. And she actually brings something to the table and goes, well, let me help you. And of course, he's too much of a curmudgeon to say, oh, okay. But because I think that's one of the most monumental scenes we talked about last week that got a lot of media attention, was when she drops the F-bomb. And that's one of the few times, first time you see Stamets say, oh, it's okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And to me, that shows kind of that trajectory of that character, that Stamets he's responding to what's around him. And then he goes through immense tragedy. Like, he's going to leave the ship, and then he loses, the love of his life, who was trying to make him a better person too, was trying to introduce him to opera and there's more than your science. There's more than, and he starts to, and he doesn't, there's that entire scene where he realizes only after he dies that he what he was doing, because he has that, I never listened to this opera the same way, and now that I hear it, I realize the way the notes, it's the science in of itself, and so to me, I think Stamets is almost the most human of the characters, because he starts off very territorial, and he knows what he has created and the value of it. And I think going back to the first season, the first time he goes over and he sees what happened to his counterpart, the other guy that worked on the project with him, when they tried to escalate it too quickly, and they all die, and all of that. I think to me, Stamets is probably, hold a gun to my head, but probably my favorite character, because he does have, all right, I love the original series. So to put it in original series term, he has just enough of McCoy-ism to him.
He doesn't have the swagger.
No. But he has that attitude of, I know this is mine, and so it comes across
as Chad, he's lost a lot of it for the third season.
Yeah, I mean, the last episode I've seen something, but I'm comparing to,
I don't want to give away the end.
Well, because why does God need a doctor?
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. but when I look at Stamets, I compare him to LeVar Burton. I compare him to Cole Meany. I compare him to, oh God.
Well, Cole Meany, I'll give you, but I never thought Geordi was an overly interesting character either.
He brought something to the character.
LeVar Burton's a good actor. I just
he was
a good director.
He was a very one-dimensional character in Next Gen. He absolutely was. But something about his delivery, his presence, brought something to that role.
Yeah.
Stamets or Bill Anthony Rapp doesn't have that, I feel like. Now, this last episode of season 3, when he's being forced to do something that he doesn't want to do, I'm starting to catch. I was like, oh, I'm starting to see something.
Well,
but I'm
I think they set up
in.
season 4 for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I will not
Same
give
way.
anything away, Chad.
Nothing around. Yeah.
I will not give anything away, but all I will say, I know you've got half an hour left, and I do not want to hear anything, but there is a look, and there's already a lot of conversations going on Star Trek on Twitter.
Yeah.
There is a look that occurs in the last 20 seconds of the
Last
episode.
20 seconds, yeah.
And it literally speaks volume. And I honestly was saying there going,
even
oh,
before
that's going to be.
Yeah,
Okay.
even before the look, Chad, though, you're smart enough to know that they just set up season 4 with all those decisions.
Oh yeah, no, I'm getting that.
Yeah,
I just haven't seen where those decisions lead up to the last episode.
Like I
But
said,
and
Chad,
James, real quick, I am blanking. Scotty, what's his name?
James Doohan.
James Doohan. Yeah, Stamets doesn't really catch on to any of those, and I'm like, I don't have that. And in that role, to me, is the role that I have always loved in Star Trek. That's why
He's
Stamets
not
is a
really
hard
the
time for me.
engineer, right? I mean, he's
the closest thing to the engineer role.
But
Reno is, and now granted, Tig Notaro has not been in a lot, but that is the character, and I want to see more of her.
Well, no, and I love, and they work. So it is a Spock and McCoy back and forth when they're playing off of each other. And I love the fact they even have that scene where somebody comes in, but it's like, well, this shouldn't be how this works. So you're like, this is the way we process or whatever. That entire scene is gold. It honestly brought back so much original series memories of watching that with my dad and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, finally. And again, I think that's why my heart goes out to Discovery for what it's trying to do. And we talked about this last week, where they're allowing confrontation to be even among the crew. That's important, I think.
And that's one of my, and again, spoilers, but that was one of my favorite scenes of this season, was when she just randomly shows up and everybody's like, where you been? And she's just eating a piece of black licorice. And they keep saying, you can't have food in here. It's not food, it's candy. It's technically bad for me. It's not really doing anything for me. And then she just keeps snapping it. And I'm just like, I love that. That is, I want to go back and watch it again, because I just love that scene. It's only like 3 minutes long, and it's just her eating a piece of black licorice, and she just randomly appears out of nowhere. I really would like to see her become a regular cast member, but I know there's issues with her being able to do the show.
Now, as she said, with COVID. But by the way, the other thing that I do like about it is we get Culber as the doctor, but he's not the main doctor.
No.
And I love that we're getting that side of it. Like, that's the only thing about, and the original series did it occasionally by accident. Like they had Dr. Mbanga, who was also on the Enterprise. They had, if you go back to the pilot, it was Dr. Boyce and all of that stuff. But we did see other doctors on the Enterprise. We didn't see too much of that in the other shows, which would make it seem, which for Voyager it worked. He's a hologram. But are you expecting me to believe that Crusher and Bashir just were always in sickbay? And so I do love the fact that Enterprise, or that Discovery has, and Phlox too, but the Discovery has kind of went, okay, listen, here's your main doctor, and we see her occasionally, but that we're also seeing this is, Dr. Culber is not the CMO, but he is a doctor in his own right. He works in sickbay, and you see that side of it. And I will say, I think the relationship between Stamets and Culber is a phenomenal addition to Star Trek lore. I think it is honestly heartfelt, and I do think those moments of the, him being Stamets being so driven by his science, or his, I've got to do this, or I've got to protect what I created, and Culber having to be the one going, you're going to have to pull that back a little bit, right? Like. And so that balance of it actually feels like a pretty legitimate relationship, because there's times when I'll be like, no, I'm going to, and then my wife will say, hey, shut up.
Yeah. So let me talk to you all real quick. And I'm kind of curious about your opinions, but there was one Joe has his communications thing, but there is one thing that really pulled me out of this season, and it goes across all of Star Trek. I have a hard time every time they go to the alternate dimension. It just pulls me out of it, because I just hate the fact that they are so unnecessarily evil and mean, like all the time.
Well, the problem,
I just can't stand it.
It bothers me. You're right. They've done it all throughout Star Trek, so much so that they've went back to something that's been parodied, not by everyone, but also South Park.
Yeah. The beard. Yeah.
And why do they always, it's the same reason that it just occurred to me not until my 40s. Why are aliens always coming halfway across the galaxy just to steal our water or resources? Got to be some place out there that would be a little easier to do, right? Why isn't the opposite dimension just warm and friendly and filled with unicorns?
Well, there are,
it goes back to one of our original episodes. Why are ghosts always dicks?
And why are they always assholes? They're and then Tilly being that evil. Mary Weissman's a talented actress. She is. I've really grown fond of Mary Weissman as an actress. But even her trying to pull off evil, I'm just like, oh man, y'all are.
I don't even know how that society would function if they were literally that evil.
And by the way, the worst, and come at me, Star Trek fans, I don't care, but the worst parallel universe episodes was the ones on Enterprise. I'm sorry, I just hate it every minute.
You know what? I do take issue with that because
you take issue with everything I say. Why?
No. What I do like
why can't
about
you just
those
love
episodes,
me, James?
What I do like about those episodes is
I think you want to ask your mom
credits.
That, right? This is really not about James.
It's always about James.
They redid the credits. I love the fact they made those credits more militaristic, and it was all about.
They made the robots upside down in the credits. Are you talking about Enterprise?
I'm talking about Enterprise.
Oh, sorry.
Watch the opening credits for this Mirror Universe. It's all about the military buildup. So instead of being about here's our exploration, it's a military drumbeat instead of Faith of the Heart, and it shows here's our first nuke. Here's how that explains, and then it ends with Enterprise going into space.
But it's not about the credits. It's about the acting and everything being over the top evil. I just don't understand it. And every time they go into it, it just tears me out of the Star Trek. I'm like, I just can't handle it. Enough with the alternate Terran universe. I don't care.
And it's done now. I mean, you've watched Discovery.
It's not done. It'll come back. Well, they always come back to that.
And there are other parallel universes.
Terran? I don't remember.
The Terran Empire. Because Earth takes over everything. We take over Vulcan. We enslave Vulcans. We do.
And I've never understood why Earth is always called Terran. Why they call them Terrans. Like they even do that in the Marvel universe. I'm like, I don't understand why we're called Terrans.
Because another term for Earth is Terra.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. This
answer, Chad. I prefer to be called pink skins by my aliens, but that's just me. And I
know, and especially if it's Jeffrey Combs. If it's Jeffrey Combs,
he can call me a fat pink.
By the way,
anytime he wants to.
By the way, one point I do need to make, Chad, and again, not to argue with you, please don't burn my house down again. The Next Generation does not have a Mirror Universe episode. However, they did eventually do one for the comic books. But there is no Next Generation episode. We never see Mirror Picard, Mirror Kirk, Mirror Geordi.
You're right. I apologize. For some reason, okay, you're right.
But there is no Mirror Universe, which, by the way, is one that would be.
It exists.
But I think the issue there is that we do know parallel universes exist. Yes, the Mirror Universe is the most over the top militaristic one. It is basically, effectively, it's not exactly, but what if the Nazis would have won? And then you would have had this, we're the purists, and then we're going to go into space and we're going to say we're the best and take over planets. And, we're going to enslave the Vulcans, the Kelpians. We're going to, and you see that. So yeah, I mean, it's an over the top evil universe, but I do think about all the other universal variations Star Trek has shown. I mean, you get the alternate universe where Edith Keeler dies, and there's other ones that are shown. I think what makes the Mirror Universe so compelling to so many people is that there is validity historically that wars do accelerate technology. I mean, if you go to the Aviation Museum near Virginia Beach, look at the World War I planes that are plywood and cloth.
Yeah.
And how much, 20 some years, 30 years later, we're in World War II, and walk over to that hangar and check out those planes. And that's what the Mirror Universe was when the writers were working on the original series and when they revamped it for Deep Space Nine, it was a realization that we advance oddly quickly for war. Joe, you want to go ahead and do the quote from that Orson Welles said that has nothing to do with Star Trek about?
Yeah, well, I can't do it perfectly, but I'll end it with they had brotherly love. And what did they produce? The cuckoo clock.
Yeah. And so there is validity to that there is a limit to what peace can build. And that's what the Mirror Universe runs off of, that theory that hey, let me steal from Star Wars. Wars don't make one great. Well, it turns out that they definitely advanced technology.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my point. We're going to bomb the
You
North
had a point?
We're going to bomb the North Pole because we need to advance. I need a higher def television, so I'm going to need them to bomb the North Pole.
Well,
them penguins know what they did. Are those North or South Pole?
It
don't matter, bomb.
Like I said, I like Discovery. I still stick by my original. It's it's less and less Trek, and probably what I'm saying is what most of the Trekkers who hate it say. Correct, that it's moved away from it. We've talked about
it doesn't follow Roddenberry's original
episodes.
vision. It doesn't. Which again, I say watch Chaos on the Bridge, where they have that entire conversation where they first pitched the Pleasure Planet of Riza, and Gene Roddenberry went, great, we'll have everybody basically having an orgy with everybody else. And they had to be like, Gene, no, Gene. You can have a pleasure planet and that just be implied.
No, you're right, but it still works for me and I still enjoy the show.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I think to me, and like I said, it goes back to that like I said, that one character, and it had a huge impact on me when I was watching it. Just that entire scene where he says, "You can hang this," you have the authority and all of that. And then when it kind of loops back to it later, to me, that is, I can't think of any element of Star Wars or any other sci-fi franchise where somebody with that little screen time literally made me go, "Oh man, there's something to that." That, I mean, probably the closest, and it's not that same response, but would be, Boba Fett back in the I mean, he has 2 lines, and still everybody, I have that action figure.
They just love him. They just love him.
And so, but it's 2 different story arcs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's not a bounty hunter. He's a keeper of the faith, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things I was like, and the way the actor did it, I literally, like I said, it actually hit something for me, and I was like, "Oh, that's Star Trek to me." It's one of the things that made me go, "Yeah, this is, what does it mean to try to preserve this ideal?"
The only other thing I can think of, I had a list and I forgot where I put it. Is it me, or does Discovery have more Deus Ex Machina than any other Star Trek show of all time, too? Whether it be the computer that had the intelligence, the rap that's helping, the blah, 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 or the things that just pop up.
It pains me to say this, but the original series may have had a little bit more.
Did it? It doesn't seem like it did to me.
Dude, I love the episode. I love the episode. But the entire thing where Kirk is fighting the Gorn, it's like, wait, if only there was some way. What are those rocks made out of? If only could machine those into gunpowder. It's one of the things where I'm like, I mean,
and it's rampant through all entertainment. It means got out of the machine for any of you people out there who study.
As your last minute save. It's whatever
the
that
best
is.
example is Jurassic Park. They're about to be eaten by the velociraptors. T-Rex comes out of nowhere and bites one of the velociraptors, and they run out and get in the Jeep and drive off. To me, it's the best example of it ever.
Yeah. And literally the term itself comes from when they used to perform the Greek and Roman or Greek tragedies.
I thought Deus Ex Machina meant pooping the robot.
No, that's
anyway. You were saying, James.
Anyway, but it comes from in a lot of the Greek mythologies and things like that when they were read or
self-sealing stem bolts.
Yes, when they were read. It and you can see this even in some of the remade for films. Hercules is getting beat down, and all of a sudden he goes, "Zeus, help me!" And Zeus shows up and helps.
Yeah.
Right? Or he gives him extra power. That's it. It's goes back to mythology. It is, and so it is relatively common. But again, it doesn't necessarily take me out of it. But they do use it quite a bit. Now they also use some ingenuity here and there. But no, I do think that's a fault in.
There's a scene Chad hasn't seen with the main character. Yeah, it's quite a bit. I'm just going to come right back out of this. virtual thing. And
well, no. I was about to say, I think that, but like I said, I think that's true of Star Trek. There's certain episodes, and I love them. I do. I love them. But I mean, you could go. One of my favorite episodes from the original series, which a lot of people don't name, but I love the Squire of Gothos. That's the episode with Trelane. And I mean, it's actually a great scene and thing because they were so convinced, oh, the mirror is where he gets his power. And what happens? Kirk shoots the mirror, and he doesn't lose his power. And what ultimately stops him at the end? Spoiler if you've never seen the episode. His parents show up and say, "Stop playing with these lesser beings. Stop it." And it turns out all the mirror did was stop his parents from noticing what he was doing.
Yep.
The mirror blocked his parent. The mirror disabled the V chip on his television so he could watch what he wanted. So I mean, that again, I think that's a pretty common thing. But I think when it's done well, and I'm not saying it's always done well because it's not. But I think when it's done well, it does show that, hey, it's a big universe that we're playing in, and there's things that you're not going to be able to control. But it's not always done well.
All right, guys. Anything else to
say? At the end, like you mentioned earlier, when that T-Rex shows up and bites Peter Weller's leg off to make him realize the error of his ways.
And he says, "No, not again." And we don't even know what he's referencing.
Yeah. It's weird.
The T-Rex when he goes, Are you a cop? Because I don't like cops.
And then for some reason, we hear as the legs being pulled away, a VCR open up. So we're just saying,
I got this problem. Cops don't like me.
Oh.
Then he said, Dr. Dre can have all the donuts.
and then this guy comes out and he says, "My name's Ed, and I'm the 209th person in my family named that." And they said, "Oh, you must be Ed 209." And they just go with it. Anyway, Chad, that's what you've got to look forward. Actually, it would be awesome if when Chad watches it, Paramount Plus messes with him just enough to edit all our ideas in.
Right.
Poop in the robot.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
This has been our episode on what the hell did we talk about again?
Really, season 3 and just generally, but yeah. So I mean,
and the fact that James hates Stamets, Nicolas Cage, Vincent Price, and Edgar Allan Poe.
I will burn down everything you love, which from what I understand is everything that I love. So, I'm full of self. By the way, real quick to wrap up. So as we think about, so we talked about season 3 finally.
Yeah.
We talked about season 1 and 2. Overall, what do you think about the trajectory of the show? Is it going upward?
I enjoy it. I don't know that it's going upward because my favorite villain is gone from the first season. So it's consistently good and it takes me places that I don't always necessarily seem like you're talking about. I didn't know they're going to shoot 800 years into the future. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate that about them.
Yeah, just like season 2, I didn't know season 2 was all going to be led by Pike, and I'm just like, I really cannot. I'm excited about season 4. I want to see where they're going.
Yeah, so I like the fact that they do it. It's just sometimes I wish they'd put a captain in that seat and kind of live with it for a year or two.
Well, and allegedly,
how's that for a criticism?
I'd say, and allegedly, again, without giving anything away, we're going to see the decision made at the end is going to stick for a while.
Okay.
Because the other party, I mean,
here, how about I do this? Go ahead.
Obviously, there were no major cast changes.
No,
so we know.
I feel
Mr.
like he's
X,
actually not talking about. I feel like he's doing something to besmirch me.
No, I'm actually talking.
Know what besmirch means.
We know see, put him back in. We know Doug Jones is back next season.
Right.
He is not going to come back and instantly be captain because he has to.
But doesn't that piss you off a little bit, James, that he switched it up a def?
Can somebody give me a thumbs up if I can put my headphones back in?
We will think about it.
Okay.
So doesn't that piss you off just a little bit? And by the way, you all didn't ask me mine. I actually have problems with Michael. Because it's just everything works out for her, even when she does stupid things.
It doesn't bother me.
My headphones are attacking each other. Rawr.
It doesn't matter. It's like having our own wash, except not as entertaining and not capable.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting for a poll to go through it.
like a leaf on the wind.
Like
See
a
how he,
leaf on the wind. Just go ahead and put them back in. What I was mentioning is that you all didn't ask me mine, and it's not, I don't know that she's my least favorite, but I have a lot of times they push Michael to the forefront when I feel a lot of the actions that she does would not put her there in a natural storytelling.
I agree with that.
They keep pushing her to the forefront. And by the way, she's a good actress. Yes. She's fantastic on The Walking Dead. She's good in this. That's not it. It's the character makes so many stupid decisions that she's rewarded for.
Do you think though, and I'm not,
or brash decisions that don't really fall into Star Trek?
I'm not making excuses.
Which goes back to my whole original point. Do you understand what I mean? It's just, it's like, it's the name of Star Trek. It has some of the points, but I don't know that it's necessary. I still don't know that it's necessarily Star Trek. I enjoy, and before you kill me, I enjoy the show. I like the show.
No, but I'm not making excuses for it. But do you think, and maybe I'm rationalizing here, but do you think it's finding that balance for, you've got years of fans, like, and I've said this before, people say, who's your favorite captain? I'm like, do I have to serve under them? Because if I have to serve under them, Picard's at the bottom. Why? Because Picard stays on the ship. And if I'm going to stick my neck out, I expect somebody to stick their neck out with
But that probably makes more actual captain sense.
It does. And that's what I mean. So, and
you probably wouldn't send the captain out on every tab.
And for Thomas,
some reason, he shouldn't rip halfway through somehow the episode.
He shouldn't be, hey, Ensign Thomas, ship's historian, and Picard are going to go down, and there's going to be space lizards, and we're just going to see what. No, I agree. From a logistic viewpoint, but from again, it's the question I always ask somebody: who's your favorite captain? Because it's been since Next Generation came out, right? And once it got big, it's been Kirk or Picard, or later on Sisko. And my answer always is, what capacity are we dealing in? If
Scott Bakula.
And that's my happy middle ground. Like if it's in every aspect, I have to serve under them. I have to work with them. It's going to be Archer.
Archer is the one I identify with the most, even though it's not my favorite. I love Deep Space Nine, but Archer is the one on a human level. That person, the way it was written, is the one I identify with the most out of all the Star Trek cast.
And to me, he's one of the most explorative because he's still figuring everything. And there's something about. But literally, my answer is always: if it's a diplomatic mission, you send Picard. If it's war, you send Sisko. If it's exploration, you send Archer.
Yeah.
If it's, just getting people alive, keeping people alive, it's probably Janeway. And if it's for the sheer adventure of it, it's going to be Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the logic that I made. Now, that being said,
where does Pike come in?
We'll see. I've got to figure that out, man. I'm on a journey of discovery. See what I did there? Anyway, the other side of it is, though, I say all that to say,
what about Sulu?
I mean, he's pretty high up.
As Takei says, he's technically the hero of Star Trek 6.
He is. Yeah. Absolutely. Fly her apart then. Anyway, I love that line.
I do too. I love it.
It's gonna shake us apart. Fly her apart.
Fly her apart anyway. Then. Oh, I love it. You're absolutely right. Oh, it's good, right?
The entire, but I say all that to say, do you think one thing Discovery's having to wrestle with is years of fandom saying, well, we want somebody adventurous like Kirk. Well, Kirk broke the rules all the time. So that wouldn't be accurate, quote unquote. Okay.
What about Riker?
Here's Picard. Okay, well, yeah, he's a little bit of a stuffed shirt a lot of time. He always quotes, okay, well, here's Sisko. He's going to know the regulations, but also know when to break them. Yeah, well, he poisoned an entire planet, so we're a little bit okay. Well, here's Janeway. Well, sure. I mean, she's dedicated to her crew, but so do you think by the time they get to Discovery, one reason you have that rotating captain seat is you're just knowing you're going to make everybody upset about something? So, hey, you want the angry captain? Good. Here's your Lorca. Guess what? Season 1, he's gone. You want your upbeat, you've got potential captain? Pike. Okay, cool. So, and again, we'll see how this plays out through the next several, hopefully, seasons. But I do wonder if one of these days we're going to be able to look back and say, oh, it's a commentary. Because I think in some ways we do that with our military now, right? What's the
Every 4
purpose of
years.
our military? To defend, to attack, to
Mhm.
preserve, to safeguard? What is it?
I don't know. I didn't serve. I'm
Well,
not a
you-
good American.
Well, I mean,
And I've gotten off the point of what we were talking about.
you've been
Yeah.
served with my
Yeah,
sick,
that's
sick
true.
dance moves.
Oh man, I missed that guy. All right. So are we done?
We are done.
All right. This has been Bonehead Weekly. If you have hate mail, please send it to Glenn Cochran somewhere in bumfuck Australia. I don't know.
I think
Does he live in
I-
Melbourne? Or is it Melbourne?
I think I
If
think
you're in Florida, it's
mispronouncing it.
Melbourne.
I would say I think you're mispronouncing it. I think in Australia it's pronounced Bumfiesel. I'm not sure about that.
Bumfiesel,
I don't speak Australian.
death noodles everywhere. All right.
Everything on it's pretty much like the hot Rurapente. It'll kill you.
This has
You
been-
want to stay in prison, it's just safer.
It's been Bonehead.